All right, guys, in today's video, we're going to go over one of the most important skills in bow hunting. Unfortunately, also one of the most neglected, and that's how to get your broadheads razor sharp. Now, I'm not talking about just kind of sharp. I'm talking about slick the hair off your arm, razor blade sharp. Let's get started. So when you're sharpening a broadhead or any kind of blade, there's only two things that you really have to accomplish to get this thing razor sharp. Number one is to hold a constant bevel. This is absolutely critical. Some of you will be able to do it freehand like I'm going to show you. Some of you are just, no matter how much you practice, you're just not going to be able to do it. For broadheads, there's several different jigs available on the market that are going to help you to hold that bevel constant. One of them that's very popular is called a KME. It's basically a clamp with a roller on it that will help you to hold that bevel constant. I'll put a card up here with a link in there to that, and then also I'll put it down in the video description. Now, the other requirement for getting these things razor sharp is to create a burr and then cut that burr off. And so if you look at this edge microscopically, when you achieve that burr, it's going to look like there's some little feathered pieces of steel that are coming off the bottom side of this. Now, once we create that burr, we can flip the blade over and just very lightly with our honing stone cut that burr off. Now, at that stage, your broadhead or whatever blade you're working with should be pretty doggone sharp, but we can take it a step farther by using a strop like this one that I've got right here. I've actually got some buffing compound on this piece of leather that I'll use to really fine-tune that edge. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks in this video that are going to help you to get your broadheads razor sharp. And the first one is this right here, a regular old black Sharpie marker. Sometimes it can be difficult to see exactly where you're removing material and where you're not. And so if you take a Sharpie and color the edge, it'll make that stand out very clearly. All right, so if you've got a broadhead that's dull, let's like really dull, let's say you shot it into the dirt, or maybe you were shooting it into a target and happened to hit another tip that was stuck in there, just kind of rolled the edge a little bit and ruined that edge. You can bring that edge back. You just need to go a little bit coarser with your tool. Now, this is just a regular old mill file, a single cut mill file, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, making sure that I maintain my bevel. Now, with a file like this, you can actually remove so much material that you're changing the grain weight of these broadheads. So, you want to try to file as little as you can, but enough to recut that bevel and get the broadhead sharp again. Now, one thing I will caution you about on this is when you're filing metal with a mill file like this, sometimes you can get metal shavings stuck in the file itself. And if you do that, you'll start to feel, it'll start to drag a little bit and be rough. If that happens, just take it off, brush those filings out, because if you don't, it'll actually cut into the edge that you're trying to sharpen and create these deep gouges in there. It's not usually a big problem, it's just kind of makes it harder to use the file. And one thing you can do to help to guard against that is you can take chalk and chalk your file, and that keeps those shavings from sticking down into the teeth on your file. So when you create that burr, you should be able to feel it, and sometimes you can actually see it. When you get that done, go ahead and take it out, flip it over, and then just very, very lightly with your honing stone, cut that burr off. Now, sometimes when you're trying to cut the burr off from the bottom side of the blade, it'll actually just push it to the other side. If that happens, flip it over again, come from the other side, and do the same thing, and keep repeating that back and forth until you cut that burr off. So if you look closely on this edge, you can see that I've created a really big burr. It's so big that I can actually pull it off. Now this only ever happens when I use a file to sharpen these blades. It's not necessary that you create a burr that big. The only reason I did that is because this broadhead was super dull and I needed to recut the edge. So now just go ahead and use a strop to fine tune this edge. So I used a file to sharpen an extremely dull broadhead, but if you're sharpening a broadhead that's not super dull, I'd recommend going with a finer grit diamond stone or something similar so that you don't remove more material than you need to. But you still need to strive to create a small burr on that bottom edge. All right, so there's a couple more little tips I'm going to give you. One is for touching up your broadheads when you're in the field. Now, of course, you can take these little diamond stones that I have. They're super lightweight, they're easy to carry. But what I'm going to be using this year is my buddy Brad over at Argali sent me this belt that they've made. It's got a leather stropping pad on here, and then the belt buckle has a little diamond stone on the back. And so you often find that when you're in the field, you need to touch your broadheads up because just the act of putting them in and out of your quiver will kind of knock that edge off of them a little bit. So every few days, I'll just give them a little touch up with a stone. Now the last little tip that I'm going to give you, and some of you guys that have been watching my videos for a long time have seen this before, but the edge of your window right here is basically a very fine ceramic honing stone, and it's great for touching up broadheads, especially if you whitetail guys that are kind of driving to your hunting spot and you're hunting kind of from your truck. But again, you just need to match that bevel. Come back the other way. Just a little touch up just right before you head to the stand, and you'll be guaranteed you'll have a razor sharp broadhead and you'll be ready when that big buck comes out. All right guys, that's going to do it for this one. We'll see y'all on the next one.